Good afternoon, all you Sand Run Travels travelers, and welcome to February Sand Run Travel Show. Uh, we're,
Yeah, good afternoon.
Thanks, Reg. It's Reg and Steve. We're here to say hi, and we hope you're having a great winter. Um, Obviously, it's a little bit different winter than we're normally used to with not being able to go anywhere. I was just talking to, and I'm sure Reg and I have had this discussion. Normally, this time of year, we're getting all ready to go on a winter cruise, and unfortunately, we're not going to do that this year.
Yeah, we would have been leaving next Saturday.
Yes. Yeah, I know. We would have been going down to the Caribbean and enjoying ourselves. We were going out of Tampa. We were going to collide with the Super Bowl. Might have even seen Tom Brady while we were down there. Who knows?
Who knows?
But we're not. But we are still going to plan cruises this year. Now, what we've discovered is we may not be cruising anytime soon. We're hoping to cruise this summer. But I think Reg would be Reg. Don't you think it more likely is going to be late summer, fall if we get started this year?
Uh, Depending on how this vaccination things go, it's probably late summer, fall before the cruise lines are really going to start to look at kicking it back up. But even there, it's still a long shot because from talking with our BDM, our business development manager, even the cruise lines don't know specifically when they're going to be able to get back.
Yeah, and I want to use that little comment there as a kind of a platform for myself, and I think for Reg as well. I've already got started getting my vaccine, and I want to encourage anybody seeing this: go get the vaccine. Uh, it's better to take the vaccine and take a little bit of risk than the risk of getting COVID because we don't know how it's going to affect folks. And from a travel standpoint, I suspect having a vaccine proof that you've had it is going to be a big deal, not only with the cruise lines, but with air flights and with maybe even going to certain locations in the country. And I
Uh,
know it will be outside of the country. We're already dealing with the protocols of leaving and then trying to figure out how to come back if we do. So I know the vaccine is going to help us do some traveling. If you're interested in going places, please go get it. I got mine. I had no reactions. I've heard of people having reactions, but it's really well worthwhile. Given that, we wanted to tell you that one of the cruises that we will be talking about probably for the next 10 months is we already have booked our 2022 Winter Escape next February, February of 2022. We're going out of LA for the first time ever down to the Mexican Riviera. And I'm sure we'll come up with some creative ways to enjoy LA either before or after the cruise. Who knows? I might even find a casino out there to go along with us. So that we know we're going to be talking about that, and I would give us about a 98% chance that that one will actually go. Now, along with that, as we look forward to anything that might be possible in 2021, San Run Travel is going to be adding a new cruise line, at least we expect to, called Virgin Voyages. And one of the things that really got us interested in it is an adults only cruise line, which a number of our clients have talked to us about. And it generally is an all inclusive style so that once you book, your drinks are also included. So that's something to look forward to as we get closer to being able to book some things with them. We'll be sure to be letting you know. And along with what we said earlier about the vaccines, sometime in the summer and the fall, we hope to be able to start other groups. We're still thinking that the air travel is going to be the first to come back, as far as we know, as far as our type of group tours will go. And the buses will come along a little bit later, although I'm sure, Reg, you're already trying to figure out how to do a day trip, right?
I'm looking at it, but I haven't figured it out yet. But some of the casinos are opening up, and they are taking day trip buses. So if we can work something out, we will get one set up for them as soon as possible.
Very good. I'm looking forward to getting out. And again, everybody's going to feel more comfortable when we have that vaccine in our arms. Now, given that, that's about it. We're going to do our drawing later on after the end of the show, at the end of the show. And we're still going to tell you, watch our Facebook pages, watch the website. Maybe we'll get some stuff out there. We are still going to continue to plan virtual events so that we can have a little bit of levity in our life. But today, we're going to focus on Gettysburg, not a place Sand Run Travel has ever taken a tour to, but very much close to my heart since I grew up about 30 miles from Gettysburg. Spent a lot of time going over there, and have recently figured out that once buses are back, there's a reasonable chance I can figure out a way to include a casino and do a tour of Gettysburg. So with that, our first video today is going to be something of historical nature, where we're going to show what's called the Battle of Gettysburg in 4 minutes, actually 5, but we're going to head and go it. You ready, Reg?
Yeah, let's go.
In June of 1863, Confederate General Robert E. Lee took his Army of Northern Virginia into the North for the second time. The Union commander, George Gordon Meade, was in pursuit. They would ultimately bump into each other here at Gettysburg. Behind me is the town of Gettysburg, around which the Battle of Gettysburg will be fought. The Battle of Gettysburg started by accident. Literally, troops bumped into each other. General Lee heard that Meade was pursuing him, and Lee concentrated his army. The Union vanguard is already here as well, and they're going to bang into each other north and west of town on McPherson's Ridge. It's an intense fight. Ultimately, the fight will grow until north of town. You're going to have the Union 11th Corps fighting against a corps under a guy named Richard Ewell. In the end, you're going to have 30,000 Confederates outflank and whip 18,000 Union troops who retreat back through town to Cemetery Hill and to Culp's Hill, where we stand now. And for the next 24 hours, all that happens is that both sides bring the remainder of their troops here until the Yankees have maybe 90,000 troops and the Southerners have maybe 70,000 troops. And the Yankees form in the shape of a fishhook. And we are right here on this fishhook at the end of Culp's Hill here. The Union line will continue along Cemetery Hill behind me, Cemetery Ridge, and eventually end over on Little Round Top. The Southerners line up around that line, basically formed on the most distant tree line you can see way off in the distance, okay? If General Lee needs to go from one side of his army to the other, it's 6 miles. Meade only has to go 2.5. Meade is also on the defensive. Meade has more men on a more compact line, and Lee is more strung out, and Meade finally has the home field advantage. On the second day of the battle, Robert E. Lee decided to take 20,000 troops under James Longstreet and attack the Union left, and take maybe 5,000 to 10,000 and attack Culp's Hill. But the attack on the Union left flank took place first. The Southerners are going to have to get over there without being seen opposite the Union lines. Ultimately, the Southern line will attack what's called an echelon, where a couple of brigades moved in, and then a couple more, and a couple more. And ultimately, Longstreet's men will make fierce attacks. First they'll fight at Devil's Den and Little Round Top, and then onto the wheat field. And then they actually have found a gap in the middle of the Union line, troops that had gone to reinforce some of the fighting in other areas. But the Confederates can't quite push through it, because wherever they show up, Union reinforcements from inside Meade's strong fishhook position arrive and push the Southerners back. Ultimately, the bloodiest fighting at Gettysburg, the second day on the south end, will come to a close without a decisive result. And while Longstreet is attacking the Union left flank, the Confederates are beginning a huge artillery bombardment on the Union right flank, here on Culp's Hill. That bombardment wouldn't do anything. The Confederate attack doesn't come for long, until long after, actually, the fighting on the Union left flank is mostly over. Ultimately, the Southerners will try to attack East Cemetery Hill. They capture part of East Cemetery Hill. They capture 9 cannons. This is the key Union position at East Cemetery Hill, and it's about to fall to the Confederates. But again, Union reinforcements push the Confederates back. The Confederates have a little bit more success here on Culp's Hill. Culp's Hill consists of 2 hills, an upper hill and a lower hill. This is night fighting, very odd in the Civil War. The Confederates easily capture the lower hill, but they're unable to capture the pinnacle of Culp's Hill. The next day, the fighting resumes, where the Confederates try to capture Upper Culp's Hill. The Yankees return with even more reinforcements, not only recapturing their old trenches in Lower Culp's Hill that they had lost, but maintaining their possession of Upper Culp's Hill. On the third day, having already tested the Union left flank and the Union right flank, the Confederates opted to attack the Union center. And this is what we now know as Pickett's Charge. Pickett's Charge is going to take place in the fields behind me, and on the afternoon of July 3rd, you're eventually going to have a great moan go up from the Union line. This is after a huge artillery bombardment, but the moan comes not from that, but rather from the beauty and pageantry of a great Confederate assault. 12,000 troops advancing across that field, you can see over my shoulder. The Yankees decimated with long-range artillery, and as they reached the road, Union reinforcements poured to the area. The Union flank bulged out, so the Confederates are going to get flanked, but nonetheless, they push on impetuously, gain some of the key stone wall in the area. The Yankees are able to, however, push them back. 6,000 of the 12,000 soldiers who made the attack were killed, wounded, or captured. Lee lost 23 battle flags in that attack, more than he'd lost up to that point in the war combined. Robert E. Lee horribly failed in Pickett's Charge, but the next day he still stayed here and through the rain across the fields faced George Gordon Meade, said, "Come on, Meade, attack me." Meade did not take the bait. That night, Robert E. Lee pulled back through the mountains. 9 days later, escaped back into Virginia, and the Civil War goes on for almost 2 more years.
That was really interesting. It takes a lot longer than 4 or 5 minutes to see the battlefield, but it's well worth your time there. And what I wanted to tell you, there's 4 or 5 different ways to tour the battle. Obviously, you can always take a bus tour. Most of the bus tours, you can get a ranger to get on the bus and take you around if you're on a large bus. I don't know that they've added shuttle buses yet like they have out in Grand Canyon, but you can also take a walking tour and get a park ranger, and he'll be at each of the major stops, and they're usually very well educated about the sites and about what to do. And then probably my favorite long-term way to do the tour, especially if you have some children with you, is to do it by car. And the last time I was doing that, that was probably 25 years ago. But at that time it was a cassette. Now it's probably a flash drive or a CD that you can put in your car radio, car player, and it will guide you around the battlefield. And so you can see all the interesting spots and get some history on each one. And then, of course, my absolute favorite to see the battlefield is by horse. I was fortunate enough back about 15 years ago to be one of the first people when they opened up for horse trails and horse rides to the battlefield. And I can say it was probably the most interesting way I've ever gone. A really nice way to see the battle and get a feeling for the history. There are regular horseback rides now and trails. So if you're inclined to really ride a horse or learn, it's really a terrific way to go feel history. And you trust me, you really feel the history when you're on horseback. You ever done anything like that, Reg?
Now that sounds different, but no, I have never done anything quite like that, but that sounds quite interesting.
It is. So with that, we're going to now run a little video, takes a little time, top 10 interesting facts that you probably never knew. So here we go.
Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Top 10's Net, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 interesting facts about Gettysburg. From July the 1st to July the 3rd, 1863, Gettysburg was the site of one of the largest battles of the American Civil War, the deadliest by a wide margin, and one that is widely considered to be the closest the South came to winning. On top of all that, on November the 19th, 1863, it was the location where Abraham Lincoln delivered the most celebrated speech in American history, referenced by such great people as Martin Luther King. But such a historic battle has more to it than our history books often care to mention, so clearly Gettysburg is worth getting to know a little better. Number 10. The whole battle started over shoes. It sounds like a stereotype about Southern people, but during the war, many of the soldiers fighting for the Confederacy did not have shoes, as most of the shoe factories were in the North. So the battle was started by a contingent of soldiers going to Gettysburg because there was a shoe factory present. They found out the hard way there were thousands of Northern soldiers present, and thus it was on. Number 9. The oldest soldier of the Civil War volunteered in the middle of it. John L. Burns, a resident of Gettysburg, was 70 years old when the battle started. Hearing the sounds of war and being a former soldier, he grabbed an 18th century flintlock rifle and ran out to take part. This would have been the equivalent of taking a Tommy gun to the Gulf War. On the way to the battle, he found a wounded soldier and traded his gun up. After volunteering his services, he was sent to the front line. 3 bullets struck his arm during the battle, and he was abandoned as the Northern soldiers abandoned the position. Southerners found him, and he lied to them, claiming non-combatant status, so he could receive medical attention instead of being shot. Oh yes, that's right, he would have been shot. In keeping with the rules of war at the time, any soldier not in uniform was technically a spy and could be killed on the spot. He outlived the battle by 7 years, even though it was unusual in his day to live as long as he had when the battle started. Number 8. Lee's heart. On a night just before the battle started, Robert E. Lee, the commander of the Southern Army, had a heart attack. This had been cited as an influence on his judgment during the battle, such as why he made such mistakes as the notoriously costly and foolhardy Pickett's Charge. So generations of people owe that heart attack a pretty big debt of gratitude. Number 7. The Northern commanding general was brand new. George Meade had been appointed commander of the Northern Army, known as the Army of the Potomac for the River in Washington, D.C., just 3 days before the battle started. This was due to previous General Joseph Hooker losing the Battle of Chancellorsville. This was something that he should have won and humiliated the army. Thus Meade really didn't have the confidence of his staff, and the battle really was not very well organized by the North. Half the combat units were barely even engaged, and the other half took extremely heavy casualties. It was only due to extremely heroic performances by some of the soldiers in the field that the battle was not a Northern defeat. Not only that, but Lincoln would blame Meade for the fact that after the Confederates began to retreat, the Army of the Potomac didn't pursue and destroy them. Number 6. One of the heroes of the battle was George Custer. While the most famous thing that happened during the battle was the previously mentioned Pickett's Charge, since it was elaborate and suicidal, there was another important event that occurred miles away. The Southern cavalry under General J.E.B. Stuart was attempting to ride around the rear of the Northern position, where they could have wreaked havoc on the Northern supplies and greatly compromised the Northern position. They were intercepted by the brash Brigadier General George Custer, known to most today only as the guy who got killed by Native Americans at Little Bighorn. He managed to stop a much larger Confederate unit and said of his own attack, "I challenge history to cite a more brilliant cavalry charge." Even if no one had ever heard of him again, he praised himself enough to make up for it. Number 5. The soldier with the horrifying fate. In any battle where an estimated 50,000 people were killed or wounded, some people are going to have some very unpleasant fates. Something especially nightmarish happened to one of the Southern soldiers. During the battle, he was wounded and passed out. The position was then taken by Northern soldiers, who took him and some other dead soldiers into a barn. Several dead bodies were piled on top of the soldier, and he awoke far too late. It wasn't until several days later that a burial detail found him still alive under a pile of corpses. By then, he was sick in the head and body and died shortly thereafter. Number 4. The horrifying aftermath. Of course, after the battle, the situation that Gettysburg was stuck with wasn't much less horrifying than what happened to the soldier mentioned previously. A little town with a population of around 2,000 was now stuck with having tens of thousands of wounded soldiers around without the massive hospitals required. There were also thousands of soldiers who needed to be buried. One incident that really sticks out is that during the battle, around 3,000 horses were killed. A bonfire of all the dead horses was started, and the stench became so bad that the population became violently ill. Number 3. No casino campaign. Starting in 2010, a massive protest started when word got out that there was a plan to build a casino within a half-mile of Gettysburg. The campaign ultimately lasted for 20 months, demanding a distance of at least 10 miles. Ultimately, it was ruled against 45% to 41%. That 41% voted for it in the face of a nationwide protest showed that the community locals must have really wanted that casino. Number 2. Lincoln was really ill while delivering his address. While giving one of the most concise, humble, heartfelt, and celebrated speeches in American history, Lincoln was actually suffering from smallpox. It wasn't life-threatening, but he still was described by people in close proximity as looking pale and sickly. So given the fact that Lincoln had a high-pitched voice at the best of times, all of those dramatic readings you sometimes hear couldn't be less like the real thing. Number 1. Many thought the address was awful. Journalist Gabor Borit, who was present, said of other journalists that they could not find much good to say about it. Lincoln himself said, "It is a flat failure and the people are disappointed." Part of the issue seems, in hindsight, to be that the speech was 247 words, which seems way too short for the message it was intended to convey. It was even too short for a photographer to get a picture of Lincoln giving the address. Something that brief can't help but seem a bit dashed off, like something that should be given little note. But today, we can appreciate the quality of those words over their small quantity. So I really hope you liked that video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also, over there on the right are a couple of other videos that you might enjoy if you enjoyed this one. And thank you for watching.
And there we have 10 interesting facts. Some of the ones that I always found interesting were the fact that General Lee had a heart attack the night before, and that the Lincoln address was so short. Although I had heard that before, that one's always just been, every time I hear it, is kind of a surprise. So I hope you learned something there that maybe you didn't know before. Now, when you go to Gettysburg, don't just go to the battlefield. Go downtown. Take a look at this fabulous old Pennsylvania town. Quite frankly, it reminds me of my boyhood home when I was first growing up till I was about 7 or 8. All the what we called row houses, which are almost all now shops and stores and restaurants in Gettysburg. But it's really a quaint little town to spend some time in. And one of the things that I've more recently really begun to understand is Gettysburg plays a lot on its ghost stories. And as I've taken a look at it and reviewed it, it's one of the 3 places that I've known, along with Savannah and New Orleans, that really has a little cottage industry about doing haunted tours and ghost stories throughout your tours of the location. So don't be shy. Go ahead and take a ghost tour or a haunted tour while you're in Gettysburg. So with that, Reg, how many folks do I have to select from for the drawing for this month?
For our drawing, we're going to select between 1 and 30.
All righty. Let's shoot for number 11.
And number 11 is Sherry Vasco.
Wow. Sherry's an old friend of ours, and we look forward to seeing her again in 2021 or 2022. So Sherry will be, we have your address. We don't have to have you check in. We'll make sure we send out a $25 gift certificate for you to use, and we'll make it through 2022. So
congratulations, Sherry.
Yeah. So that's it. Reg, you got any kind of final thoughts?
Final thoughts. When you're able to take the vaccine, please do. We're going to keep you up to date when we can get back to travel, and when we're traveling again, hopefully you're traveling with us. And when it's time to go chase the sun, we're going to be looking for it.
Great idea. Chase the sun. We can't wait for it. That's it for February, folks. Have a safe and happy February. Bye-bye now.
Bye now.